Good afternoon, people, and welcome to another video. Today I'm discussing the one desire, the human desire, that is making science unstoppable. This is a desire that has been with us and with our species since the beginning, and it will not go away either. I got this concept or this idea from this book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. It was written by Yuval Noah Harari. This is a great book. There are so many interesting ideas, so many concepts, so many perspectives of looking at our history that will blow your mind, frankly. Things that might have seemed obvious to you today, looked at through like a different perspective, makes them very extraordinary. And so I highly recommend this book. But we're talking about the one desire that is making science unstoppable. So I'm going to read you a quote from the book, and like that we start off. So, the Gilgamesh Project is the flagship of science. It serves to justify everything science does. Dr. Frankenstein piggybacks on the shoulders of Gilgamesh. Since it is impossible to stop Gilgamesh, it is also impossible to stop Dr. Frankenstein. The only thing we can try to do is to influence the direction scientists are taking. So, Gilgamesh, it mentions Gilgamesh. Who the hell is Gilgamesh? Well, Gilgamesh refers back to this book, or this story rather, I should say. The Epic of Gilgamesh. This is the first recorded story ever in human history. This is the oldest piece of writing of a human story that exists. It is estimated to be up to 2000 BC, from 2000 BC, so that's quite a long time ago. And when you read it, it's crazy because we are almost exactly the same still today. The Epic of Gilgamesh is about a king. He loses his friend and he basically sets out on a quest to conquer death in order to save his friend that has died. And so this concept of conquering death, or this desire of conquering death that Harari refers to, this has been with us since the beginning. We have always been infatuated with immortality and overcoming death, and we continue to be infatuated by it. So in Sapiens, he uses the Gilgamesh Project to symbolize the humanity's age-old dream of immortality. And the quote is also a critique and also an observation of science's pursuit of overcoming death. Because science is in the end also just a reflection of us. And so science has a real pursuit of immortality as well. And then also, of course, the mention of Frankenstein makes it obvious of where science can go too far. Even though we are led by this desire of conquering death, and saving human lives is always a good argument, it's almost impossible to argue against it. So there is not really the option of pushing on the brakes. No one will be able to say, no, we need to stop the discoveries, we need to stop saving lives. We will always try to continue saving lives because this is embedded in us, this desire. It was embedded in us 2000 BC and it's still embedded in us today. But what we need to do is direct the scientists. This is also what he says in the quote. And I think this is also a reflection of how science has now finally replaced myth and religion in humanity's quest for eternal life. Humans, through all the ages, have fantasized about eternal life, and we used to turn to gods and to deities and make up stories that satisfied this desire of eternal life. And now we're turning to science. That's quite the step we've made. So now there are scientists that don't consider death as some form of metaphysical mystery. We have scientists now that consider death to be a technical problem in which they try to find a technical solution. We are playing with ideas like hooking up people to computers. We are playing with all types of things, with the genome, etc., etc. And so science has really taken on this quest of eternal life and overcoming death. And there is no stopping it. This desire will always be there. So even though there are a lot of implications with hooking up humans to computers and whatnot, the argument always is to cure illness. And it's very hard to argue against curing illness. But the implications might be much, much larger than just curing some psychiatric illness or some paralysis or something like that. And this also doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to cure psychiatric illness, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to cure paralysis and all these kinds of things. Not at all. Anyone that is actually arguing against the saving of human lives is pretty lost. I think we should always try to save human lives, and we should always try to improve things for other humans as much as possible. But I thought it was interesting how this topic of overcoming death and how this desire that we've had since the beginning is still with us today, but now it is in science, and it's making science unstoppable. And because we cannot stop this desire, we run the risk of Frankenstein. We are not able to pump the brakes, and I think in order to influence the directions that scientists are taking, I'm in no way an expert on this, by the way, but I think we, as always, we should just push for ethical standards, and we need to ensure transparency. Without transparency, there can never be accountability, really. And I think another thing that we should consider is global cooperation instead of competition. Because when things get a bit in the gray area, when things get a bit tricky, and you add on competition, competition can be another driving force that is like the last thing that pushes the people over the edge. So if people are on the fringe of science and they're playing with ideas that you don't know how ethical they really are, and then you introduce competition and financial competition at that, this might be the last thing that pushes them over the ethical edge, so to say. There's also other aspects of science. Science is embedded in not just our psychology, but also in our economies. And there's not really any way of getting rid of that, and we shouldn't get rid of that. We want science to help us, and in order for it to help us, it needs incentives, and it needs to be part of the economy. This is nothing weird at all, but it's important to keep in mind when we are at these ethical boundaries. So maybe we should not stop the pursuit of immortality, but we need to still work very carefully when we try to solve this technical issue of death. And I think this is more relevant than it used to be. I mean, we brought back the dire wolves. We are implanting chips in brains. There are experiments of monkeys on one side of the earth controlling a robot arm on another side of the earth just by thinking. And we also have, of course, Neuralink, which is doing great things for people that are paralyzed and whatnot, which is really incredible, and seems to be one day it might cure paralysis. So we need to be aware of this, and I thought this was a very interesting way of looking at it. The desire of eternal life and conquering death that used to be part of religious beliefs now is also a very much possibility and reality, since it has been taken over by science. that was all I had to say. I really recommend this book, and I also thought this book, the Epic of Gilgamesh, was really interesting, since you notice that we have not changed that much since the old days, and a lot of the aspects of the story appear again in other religions and in all kinds of stuff. So the same plots are just repeating themselves in a lot of different places. I thought that was interesting. And otherwise, I hope you have a good day. Bye.